you for attending today's webinar, Session 1, Using Survey Data to Create Existing Terrain. This is the first session of our 8-part webinar series for OpenRoads Designer, How to Deliver from Survey to Plan Production. Before we begin, we'd want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We will try to answer as many as we can during the live webcast. Please know we do capture all questions. The dataset for today's session and additional learning materials and opportunities are available in the resource list. We encourage you to download any resources or bookmark any links that you may find useful. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. Webinars are bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. The webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. Some networks cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides are behind, pushing F5 on your keyboard will refresh the page. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help widget at the bottom of your screen. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 1 day after the webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. If you are watching today's webinar with a group of colleagues, you can provide us a list of additional participants. Please download the Excel file located in the resource list, fill in the information, and email back to the Bentley email address located at the top of that file. Now I'll hand it over to Joey so we can start off this OpenRoads Designer webinar series.
All right, thanks, Catherine. First of all, let me welcome everyone. We do appreciate your attendance. This is the first session in our 8-week series of webinars. So again, welcome. We do appreciate it, and we hope that you find this entire event through the 8 weeks beneficial. Through the 8 weeks, we plan to cover the major design steps, really, of a design process. You see on the screen the roadway model that we're going to build. And so ultimately, we're going to end up with the model that you see on the screen. And I want you to understand, too, that we can't necessarily cover everything within our limited time frame that we have, but we're going to do our best to cover the big ticket items that are relevant to this design scenario. We're going to cover those in a useful and practical way. So the model that you see there, it is the design model. And again, we've produced that, and that's where we will end up throughout these sessions over the coming weeks, as long with creating that model, designing it, producing the deliverables that go along with it as well. Now, in addition to seeing the model and understanding where we are, as we go through these sessions, we're going to build upon each data or piece of data. Data set's going to be built as we go along. Next session, next Tuesday, is going to focus on creating horizontal and vertical geometry. And just as a note, there's a link to the landing page in your lower right corner in the resources widget that you see on your screen, so you can jump directly to that landing page if you haven't registered for session 2. Or if you want to share that landing page with others, feel free to do that. Now, in addition to the ongoing sessions, we've provided data sets. The data set will be provided for each and every session, okay? For this session particularly, the data set is downloadable. If you haven't done that already, it is in the resources list on your lower right. You can click that, download the data set for today's session directly if you haven't done it. You're welcome to follow along with Kevin while he presents this material live. But just understand that due to time constraints and just the limited window we have, he'll be moving a little faster than he would in a typical training class. So if we're moving a little quickly, just understand that this session is being recorded. It will be available later today for your viewing. You can download the data, and then you have the freedom to go back, watch this session, and then follow along at your own pace, at your own convenience as well, okay? So just want to make you aware of that. Again, the data is available for this session. It will be made available for each session as we go along, and it will continue to build through each of these sessions week after week after week. In addition to that, the Q&A box is open. It is available. You'll see it on the left-hand side of the screen. So if you have questions while Kevin's presenting, we welcome those. We encourage those questions. Just type them in the Q&A box. There's a team of Bentley colleagues on the line, behind the curtain, so to speak, available to respond to your questions. Again, feel free to use that Q&A box, and we'll do our very, very best to respond to those. In addition to that, Kevin will hold just an open Q&A session at the end, where Kevin, once he's done with the actual presentation portion of today's session, we'll just have an open Q&A, and Kevin will be able to respond to your questions then as well, okay? But again, we welcome those questions and encourage those. In addition, I want to point out just some additional resources that are available. Understanding that you may be relatively new to OpenRoads Designer. Again, these are resources that we're providing that I think you'll find value out of. First of all, we have created a specific learning path that really supplements this 8-week series. You can find that in the resource list on the right as well. Again, this is additional training supplementing what we're going to cover over the 8 weeks with both on-demand coursework and instructor-led coursework. And you can find that by clicking that link. It'll take you directly to the learning path. It's everything from survey down to plan production. And everything in between. In addition to that, you'll see in the resource list a link to the upcoming OpenRoads Special Interest Group meeting. We're going to focus the next SIG meeting on the fundamentals of OpenRoads Designer. So again, if you're new to OpenRoads and you want to join in, you want to ask questions, we welcome those. But we're going to go through again some of the basic capabilities and concepts that relate to OpenRoads Designer and discuss how it's different, how it's the same with our prior versions of OpenRoads, Geopack, MX Road, or Power Civil. So make a note if you want to join that as well. There's 2 sessions, a morning and an afternoon, at least for the US-based folks. So there's 2 sessions available for you to jump in there. Again, it's extra information, open for Q&A, and we'd be happy for you to join in. Now, in addition to that, one more, last but not least, point I want to cover. The Open Roads and Open Bridge Conference for 2020 has been scheduled. It's scheduled for March the 16th and through the 18th, 2020 in Orlando, Florida. So again, if you'd like the opportunity, you're new to OpenRoads Designer, an opportunity to learn. If you come to the conference, you'll have access to sit in on hands-on workshops, attend presentations by users as well as Bentley colleagues, and really sit in on roundtables hosted by product management, and then just interact again with a breadth of industry colleagues and experts. And it's a good opportunity to learn and to grow in terms of the industry and expertise when it comes to Bentley applications and so forth. So again, a couple of things there I just wanted to point out. Again, resources and usefulness. And with that as well, welcome you to this series. We are excited about it and we appreciate your attendance. I have one final thing to ask of you. If you wouldn't mind, you'll see a poll on the screen. And for us really to understand where the audience, where you all are in terms of what software you're currently using, if you wouldn't mind just clicking the button and answering that poll, whether or not what version of Bentley Civil software are you currently using. Is it Select Series 2, Select Series 3, Select Series 4, or OpenRoads Designer Connect? Now, those V8i versions, that could be En-ROADS, that could be Geopack, that could be MX. Or it could be Power Civil for that matter. So we'll just take just a minute, maybe not a minute, just a few seconds to allow you to click that. Again, if you wouldn't mind just sharing that information with us so we can gauge where everyone's at. And then we'll tailor, of course, our presentations and our training so that we can speak to where you are and hopefully convey good information that's practical and useful to you. All right, we'll give it just a couple more seconds and then we'll go from there. All right, so again, here you see the results. It looks like there's a majority on Select Series 4. We have Select Series 2, Select Series 3, Select Series 4, and then about 15 or so % on OpenRoads Designer. So with that, thank you for doing that. We do appreciate it. Again, it gives us a little more information so that we can tailor our presentations to speak directly to you. And again, I'd like to just take a moment, welcome you, and say thank you for joining in. Please take advantage of the Q&A box. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin now, and we'll get the survey session started.
All right. Thank you very much, Joey. We are going to start this series off with using survey data to create existing terrain. So we're going to basically start from the very beginning here, start from scratch, bring in survey data that we can use to then build our design off of. I have one slide here today, and that's just our agenda of what we're going to be going through, and then we'll get started. First, we're just going to take a look at all the settings. We're going to bring in raw data that was collected out in the field. We're going to make edits to that, create our terrain that we can give to our design group, and then we're going to do some annotation and plans production there from our survey data. So that's what we have scheduled today. I'm going to flip over to OpenRoads now to get started. And we're going to start from the beginning here. For all of you who've downloaded the data set and are ready to follow along, I've launched OpenRoads here. I'm at the start screen. And the first thing I want to note is what workspace we're going to be working in. Up here at the very top in the OpenRoads Designer, I am using the Training and Examples workspace. And if you click on that, we have 3 that we deliver. Everybody should have this delivered with the software. I'm going to click Training and Examples. And then when you choose that, there are a few in there. And we're going to be working today in the Training Imperial work set. So when you launch OpenRoads, be sure that you select that. That'll give you all of the workspace information, all the feature definitions that I'm going to use, the annotations, the sheets, and all that stuff are going to be here in this Training Imperial work set. Once I have that set up here at the top, I'm going to create a new file. So I'm going to click on the New File button, and then I'm going to put that file in. I extracted all my Session 1 data here to Session 1. And down at the very bottom, we're going to pick the seed file we're going to use. So I'm going to put my cursor in the seed file and hit the Browse button to create a new file from our 3D seed. So it's important now that you choose the 3D seed file. Our survey information when it comes in is 3D. It's going to be drawn in 3D. It's going to be annotated in 3D. And so that's the file we're going to choose. And I'm just going to name the file Survey and then hit Save. And that file is going to be created in the background. OpenRoads is going to load it up. It's going to load all of our preferences and workspace information that we chose up here. While it's loaded, I do want to mention that we're choosing a 3D file to load all of our survey in. There's really 2 occasions where you're going to be working in a 3D file primarily. These are kind of the recommendations I normally give users. We're going to be working in a 3D file when we're importing survey data, and typically when you're creating terrain, existing ground terrain data, you're going to be working in a 3D file. So you'll see me working in those in 3D files today. Probably, probably the rest of the time you're working in OpenRoads, you're going to be working in a 2D file. So anytime you're going to be doing design work, anytime you're going to be doing alignments, or you're creating corridors, you're creating civil cells, any of the design tasks that you're going to be doing, you're going to be working in a 2D file most of the time. And OpenRoads is going to manage the 3D model for you as you're working in the 2D file. But today, probably unique to our survey class today, we're going to be working in a 3D DGN. So, okay, so we've created that new 3D DGN here. It's blank. The first thing I want to do when I get it open here is I want to set the coordinate system correctly for it. I'm using the Training and Examples work set, and that work set is based over in North Carolina. Our data set for our series here is based in Northwest Alabama. So we're going to, up in the search ribbon, I'm going to type in coordinate in order to get my coordinate systems command, and I'm going to click on that. You'll see this is the current the current coordinate system, we're going to switch that over by choosing the From Library button. Now, hopefully this is something, in your organizations you'll have set up in a seed file, but for the purpose of our class here, we just need to make this change real quick. If you have that select geographic coordinate system dialog up, hit the search bar there, and the search text we're going to do is AL83 and then a /2011. So AL83 /2011 and hit the find now, and that's going to search through all of the delivered coordinate systems that we have with the program, and it's going to show me the 4 that match that description there. So I'm going to choose, of the 4 that are presented to me, I'm going to choose the second one here in the list, Alabama 83 2011 west and feet. So as soon as I select that coordinate system, I'm going to hit OK. And now my my design file will be located correctly when we bring in our data. And we'll come back, that'll help us out a little bit later when we kind of verify the location of our data after we import it. So, okay, next I do want to take some time now to look at the settings that are set up in our workspace or in our seed files. Because really the power of this survey program, if I have all my settings and my standards set up and I've trained my field crews how to code the survey data coming in, I can almost do 2 or 3 button pushes in order to import data and then get out a good terrain file if I have my settings set up. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that here at the beginning because it is so important here with the survey product. So let's just take a moment to look at the raw data. And again, this was the data provided. These survey files were all that was in the data set. So we have one survey control file up here. That's the control text file. So if you're following along, you don't necessarily have to click on this. I'm just going to open it up to show it to everybody. And so this file is simply a comma separated point name, northern easting elevation, and then we have a feature code out here that describes the point, and then I'll note that there is a dash here before the description, so that's something I'll need to set up in settings, and then we have the description here. So looking at my raw data, it looks like I'm using alpha codes for my feature codes. It's looking like I'm using a dash for my note or description, and then that's it for our control file. The rest of the files that we will import are RW5 files, and let's just take a look at one of those real quick. These are the standard TDS format, but what I want to show is the type of coding that this user is using here. We have a alpha feature code. That feature code is before the linking code. So those are some settings I'm going to set up here in the program when I get to it there. And we can see that we're going to be using linking codes to link up all our shots. So it's going to, I have a shoulder here. I have a separate string here, a shoulder 1. I have a separate string here, shoulder 2. So we're using string numbers on all of our codes to link all the like string numbers together. So that's just an example of the type of coding. We're going to look into that more when the data actually comes in. So knowing that information about what is in the raw file that we're going to import, I want to look at the settings and make sure that I've set it up correctly to import that information. So first of all, in the OpenRoads standards, the first thing I want to look at is in the library section. And this is going to be the DGN libs that we've told it to load in the workspace. So we'll expand that here. The first time we open it, it takes a couple of seconds. And we have our feature definitions. If we expand that, we have our survey feature definitions. So in this DGN lib, we have all of the survey feature definitions ready to go for us to use. And what will happen is when I import my raw data file, it'll come and it'll look in this DGN lib for the appropriate feature definitions, and then it'll copy it down into the active file, and it'll be using that in the active file. So let's look for my IR field that we saw in that control text file. That's going to be this monument iron rod. I'm clicking on that, and if I look at properties, I can see that the alpha code is IR. So what's going to happen when I import that text file, it's going to come in all of my feature definitions in my DGN libs. It's going to be looking for that IR alpha code, and it's going to assign that point this feature definition. And that's very important because this feature definition is then going to tell it symbology to use. How do I want it to look? These symbologies tell it annotation groups to use. So how is it going to be annotated? So this process of coming in from the raw file, looking up the alpha or the numeric code to assign a feature definition is very important there. All right, and before I start moving around too much in the product, let me just get everybody on the same page with me with our ribbons and workflows up here. If you came into OpenRoads for the first time, maybe you were on the OpenRoads modeling workflow up here. Maybe you've been in the drawing. Today, I'm going to be camped out in the survey workflow. So to get matched up with me for what we're going to be doing today, go ahead and load up that survey workflow up here. And then primarily in this survey workflow, I'm going to be working here in the Analyze tab. And we'll be using details a lot. We'll use some of these other tools as well. So that's survey workflow up here. We're probably going to be on the Analyze tab. And you'll notice that I've already looked in the Explorer dialog. Without explaining how I got that up, most of these tabs have the Explorer. If I go to Home, the Explorer's here. Field Book, the Explorer's here. So if you don't have your Explorer already loaded up, I'm going to be using that a lot today to look at our feature definitions and our settings. Okay, so hopefully all of our interfaces look the same now and we can continue on. The first thing I'm going to do before I finish out looking at the settings is I'm going to go ahead and create a field book in this DGN file. And what that'll do is that'll copy in the rest of my settings from the DGN libs into my survey file that we can look at. So I'm going to go down here to the survey tab in my Explorer, and I'm going to expand survey data, expand the model that we're in, and I'm going to right-click on field books, and we're going to create a new field book here. So we're just going to click New. And that creates a field book ready to receive the raw data. The other thing it does is it goes out to the DGN lib in my standards, and it copies in some survey settings standards down here. I've switched from my libraries now to my survey DGN file, and I'm going to look down here at my survey settings. So I'm going to expand that, and I'm just going to click on the survey settings, and all the information will show up in my properties dialog here. So let's look real quick at what is set up in the settings. We looked at feature definitions just a minute ago, and now let's look at settings. Settings is going to control how the raw file is reduced into the graphics and into the DGN file. And so we have general settings here, which do I want to create a log file? Do I want to use any VBAs, which I'm not using? We'll come back and talk about attribute overrides a little bit later today. I tell it in settings how to handle fixed points that are in the files there. For linking codes, this is a list of linking codes. If I hit the 3 dots there, I have a fully configurable list of linking codes. Do I use alpha codes for start? I use ST in this data set. Or do I use a numeric? This list can be edited and saved into your DGN lib or into your DGN seed file, whichever you want to use. So the linking codes, whereas the feature definitions are going into that feature definition list, the linking codes are coming here to see what they need to do. So we have starts, we have curves, end codes, we can close shapes, we can do rectangular measurements and that kind of stuff there in the link codes. Those are all stored here in settings. Also, this data set, this is probably true with a lot of folks coming up from En-ROADS, it uses spaces between the feature code and the link code. So I have spaces required set to true. That's going to help me out with this data set. I'm going to link all my chains together by using the field codes and those feature codes and link codes. And then when it comes in, I'm going to keep it as a linking code feature. when the string is actually stored in our design file, it's going to stay a linking code feature. So I can still edit it with start codes and control codes, PCs and PTs and that kind of stuff. There is an option if you are more used to working with just a point list feature. You can choose that to be forced on import. Now we're going to look at this a little later, and we're going to manually change some linking code features to pointless features. But for right now, we're going to keep them all as linking code features. So a lot of the control of what's happening on the import from the raw data to the graphics is handled here in the linking code section. Here's one important that we talked about just a little bit ago. The description separator is set to a dash, so that when I read in that control file, it's going to see that dash and know that any of that text after that dash needs to be added to the description field, and we'll see that after we import it. And then the last thing I want to cover is I have the create terrain model set to true. So as soon as I import the raw data, I'm going to have a terrain file created for me automatically. And like I said, the beauty of the software is if you get it all set up right, you have all your feature definitions set up right, and your people know how to code it correctly, you really can produce a lot of work here just by importing the raw data there. Okay, so that's why that's so important. I spent several minutes there talking about settings, which is, I understand, maybe a little boring for everybody, but it's exciting stuff and what it can do, down the road. So what I'm going to do next, I have my field book ready. I have my settings ready. Let's go ahead and import that text control file. So I'm going to go back here. I'm in the Explorer again. I'm going to go back to the survey tab, and I'm going to right-click on my field book that I created, and I'm going to choose the import option, and I'm going to import a file. And the first file I'm going to import is just this control file. I'm going to hit open, and the program is going to present to me all the different text file options. And those were set up in the settings back in the OpenRoads standards there. So I have these different options for text files. Mine is this very top option. It's a comma delimited. It's a point name, northing, easting, elevation, and code. That's the order that the information was in there. So I'm going to pick the top option there. I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to bring in those points. It's going to go and look for the feature definitions that match the alpha code, and then I have to do a fit here because that way I can fit in where our project is. And my points have come in. If I zoom in on them, I can see that a feature definition has been assigned, and the feature definition told it to place this cell for the point. So I have some control points there now. So the next thing I'm going to do, once those are imported, is I want to go to import the rest of, well, we'll import some more raw files. So we'll right-click again on the field book, and we will hit import and file again this time. This time we're going to choose, what I want to do is I'm going to choose about half this first round. So we're going to choose files 2 through 11 there and import those, and we'll say open. And when we hit open on that, it's going to go through again. It's going to match the alpha codes with the feature definition. It's going to look at the link codes and string all those together. And in this batch of files, we have some duplicate point features. So if there is a point that the same point name is collected maybe from 2 different setups, it warns you and it says, hey, we found a duplicate point. What do you want to do with it? And what's cool is we have this differences tab here. So I can look and see, is this just a completely different point that they shot and I just need to rename it, give it a new name, or are they actually shooting the same point? So I can kind of compare what was first imported and what was imported second. And I can see that in my file 3, we brought in 2694. It's a traverse point, and here's its XYZ, and I can see that that matches up almost exactly with the shot that was taken in 4. So I'm good then to override it. If I go back to my option, I can say they were just doing a check shot, or they were just setting a reshot the traverse point. So I'm okay to override it. The differences in the XYZ were negligible there. It's going to go through every duplicate feature in there and just make sure that it understands what we want to do with it. And I've looked through these before, and really all of the duplicate features in this data set are these types where they're doing a duplicate shot on their traverse point. So I am okay with hitting apply all and just overriding it with the latest shot there. So I'm going to choose overwrite, I'm going to hit apply all, and it'll go through and it'll finish reducing all that raw survey data. It's pulling in the angle rights, the slope distances, the zenith angles to plot those points in the file for me. It's looking at the feature codes to tell it how to draw, and it's looking at the linking codes to build the strings for me. And we'll let it finish up here for a second. Okay, so when that's done, we see, again, all the information that was brought in. We see our shots that were collected. It's already drawing some lines for us for fencing and, everything that the feature definitions are telling it to do. The first thing you notice is it's really crowded here with all these observations data. And this is a good point to let everybody know, as we edit this information today, keep in mind, there's always at least 3 ways to do everything that I'm going to be doing here. And it's just a matter of choosing the method that you're comfortable with. The first way always is graphically. We present in the program a lot of graphical methods to edit the data. So if I want to edit a observation, I have the observation graphic here. I would call it an observation manipulator. And if I click on it, let me switch over to element selection and go in and click on one of these observations here. And let's find a good one that's not too crowded. Okay, so here's one of our observation manipulators. When I click on it, it gives me some information as manipulators. Here is the slope distance that was collected. Here's the angle right that was collected. Here's the rod height. So graphically, I can edit it. So I can come in and I can click on that slope distance. I can make it 700, and we'll see the point pull in closer to the setup. I can come in and change the angle. If there's any reason where I actually have to change the observation data, I can make it 165, and I can see that point move down to 165. So I can edit anything graphically, and that's why we see these observation manipulators here. Also, so graphic is one method. The next method is just on the properties of the element. So if I click on one of these observations here, I can go to properties and I can edit it here. I can type in a new number for my rod height, for my horizontal angle, all the observation data. So the first one is graphics. The second one is here in the properties on the graphic element. And then finally, the way that you could also edit is you could drill into the data file and drill into one of these and highlight their observations. And you can always click on details. Details is going to give you more information about what you have selected here in the survey window here. So if I hit details here, I'm presented with a table of all my points that were shot off of this observation. And again, I can come into this table and I can click on any one of these and edit the number here, and the survey will be updated. So I say that just to get you thinking that a lot of what I'm doing today, sometimes I'm going to be clicking in properties, sometimes I'm just going to be typing in the graphics. There are 3 ways to do everything. One way is not better than the other. It's just what you're used to and what you like seeing there. So, okay, so let's I'm not really going to change any of the observation data in this data set, but I do want to get rid of these observation manipulators just to clear up the data a little bit. So I'm going to come down in my field book in my Explorer window, and I'm going to hit the all observations. I'm going to turn that off. And while I'm there, I'm going to turn off setups, and that'll get rid of the traverse lines around there. So that kind of clears up the view for us a little bit. We can see the planimetrics that were created. And while I have this cleaned up a little bit, let's go and check the location of our survey there. I'm going to hit the drop down for view attributes, which is up here in the top left in your window. And I'm just going to turn on the Bing background map here just to check the location of our survey. You remember when I first created the seed file, I assigned the geographic coordinate system. I just want to look, are we lining up pretty good geographically? And so what I see here is I see a little side road down here. I see my creek running through, and it looks like my bridge looks like that is lined up good. I see some side roads here. I see a median cut through here. So it looks like my survey data is matching up, geographically with the Bing maps that are streamed in here in the view attributes. So it looks like I'm located good. So I think, I've done a little bit of import in. It's located correctly. I have good graphics drawn already. So I think I'm good to start doing some edits now and really tie down this survey information. So let's go ahead now and start doing some edits. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back off the background streaming. And there, we're just back to our graphics now. So typically in a workflow now, you're going to clean up just errors that were in the collection. And so let's zoom in a little bit here to the left side of our survey, and I'm going to go down to the bottom about where this median cut is. It looks like there's a couple of driveways down here, and I can see I kind of have a bust here that I want to fix. We got a driveway drawn. We have a big spike over to the left. Down at the bottom, near the left side of this project here. So what's happened here? Well, when the surveyor surveyed, we're coming into this driveway. When he surveyed the left side of the driveway, he called it DW1. And if you look at the tooltip here on the field code row, it has DW1. So the left side of this driveway is going to be DW1. And he connected all the DW1s together. On the right side, it's just DW without a string number on it. So all these are DWs and all these are DW. Well, at the same time he was collecting this other driveway, and he called this point DW, and he called this point DW1. You see that again in that field code line, which is the second line in our tooltip. So it looks like instead we wanted to connect up a driveway coming down on this side. And if I look, there are 2 points here that aren't connected to anything, and those are DW and DW1. So I can see it's just a matter of we've gotten the string numbers mixed up between the two driveways. So what I'm actually going to do to fix that up, I'm just going to give them new string numbers. So I'm going to come up to this first point here on this side of the driveway. I'm going to go to its properties, and I'm going to give it a field code. I'm going to change its field code, and we'll call this one 7. I'll type in a 7 there after the field code, alpha code, and hit enter on my keyboard. That's going to change that. And if you notice, if we go back and look at properties on that, that had the link start code there. So they expected the driveway on this side to connect up with all the other DW codes that they shot. So all I have to do now that I've started the DW7 up here, I have to come down here to this point, which is at the very end of that spike, and I'm going to look at the properties on it, and I'm going to make that a 7 as well. So I'm going to type in 7 and hit enter on that field code, and that cleans up this side of the driveway, and it fixes my little spike back up here in the main driveway up there. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of our little driveway here where it starts. I'm going to click on the point, go to properties. I'm going to make this DW8 and hit enter on my keyboard. That's going to start the DW8 and then connect all other DW8s in the field book after it. There are none until I edit this one. And I'm going to make this a DW8 as well. Okay, so I have created 2 new strings, a DW7 and a DW8 for this one. Since I took those points out of this string, and this kind of highlights, one of the limitations of keeping all of your strings as link code strings. Because when you're only relying on link code strings, as opposed to converting these to pointless features, the order in which the point is in the field book is very important. It's vitally important, because it's going to start at the start code, and it's going to connect all subsequent shots that have that same field code and string number together. So the order of the points in the field book are vitally important when I'm staying with link codes. And so that's what I did. I created a new string code, and this point was collected after this point, so it worked for me. if I don't want to worry so much about the order of the points in the field book, then I might want to think about using pointless features, and we'll do that here in a second. So let's our driveways are fixed up here now. I'm happy with that. Let's go over to our bridge and our creek over here, and this is a good point. We've got our our day one data in, and we've edited it. We've got it all fixed up, and now the surveyor has brought in a new set of observations from another day's work. So we're going to go and import that. That happens a lot. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in the rest of the data that we have in our data set at this time, so I can finish out the modeling in the stream area here. So to do that, again, we're going to right click on the field book, and we're going to say import, and we're going to import some more files. We did 2 through 11 at first, so with this set, we're going to do 12 through 18, and that'll bring in the rest of our data for us. And we have those same override errors where we're doing those check shots on the traverse points. All of them match up pretty good. They're all the TP codes, so we're just going to say overwrite and apply all on that. Okay, so we're going to bring in the next 6 files there. This is 12 through the end, and it's going to generate all the codes on that. Since we're bringing it into the same field book, we can backcite the same points. It's just want to highlight there that it is coming into the same field book, and it's going to draw everything for us based on the feature definitions again. Okay, so it's brought those in. The first thing you see is it's showing all observations for the new files that came in. I want to clean that up a little bit. I'm not going to do any observation edits on this data set. So all I'm going to do back over here in the field book, I'm going to turn all observations back on. I'm just going to turn them all back off there. And same thing for setups. I'm going to turn all setups on and turn them back off. And so my new files that came in are just going to turn off those manipulators as well. So I'm back to the graphics. And if I look in the stream area, this is where we're going to focus probably for the rest of the time doing our edits, the stream and bridge. We have another case here where the surveyors got a little mixed up on what the string number was on the left and right side of the stream. So it looks like they were coming down this side of the stream, the left side of the stream, and on the right side of the stream, they use the same string number. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to add a start code to this point here and just start a new string. So I've clicked on the point, going to go to properties, and the link code, I'm going to add a start code for that. Remember, all of my features are still being drawn using those link codes. So there, that ended the string on the left side of the bank, and it started the string on the right side of the bank. And now to clean that up, I want to connect the end of this string to the beginning of our next string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a control code, a join point code to this string to connect it up with this string, still using the linking code methodology. So I'm just going to write down real quick what number I want to connect it to, 5137. And I'm going to go and edit my point up here. And that shows the string there. The point is selected. And going to choose properties on that. And right now, I'm going to edit down here in the control codes. These control codes are things like joining points, if I'm doing any templates, like curb and gutter, standard templates kind of thing. If I'm doing some of my taping, rectangular taping codes, those are going to be here in the control code. So I'm going to hit to add a control code. I'm going to hit the add button, and I'm going to hit join point. And the point number that I want to join, I'm just going to key in 5137. So with that, and I'm going to tab out to accept that value. Once I've tabbed out, I'm going to hit accept. And what that does, adding that control code to my point there, tells it to connect up, whatever you're doing, connect up the line between to the point that I specified, which was 5137. So let's just go and do the same thing on the other side, where we want to connect up this point up here, which is 5278. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget it. And we'll go down and add that same control code to this point here. And we'll look, when we get the properties up, we can look and see all the different control code options that are available to us. when we hit add there. So I'm using join point now, but if you wanted to use control codes to draw some circular features, if you wanted to, again, do some of the tape distance or rectangular measurements, you could do that here. You can code those out in the field, and it'll, in the raw data, when it brings it in, it'll assign these control codes automatically. But again, I'm just using join point. I'm going to type in 5278 and press the tab key to accept that value, and then hit the accept button, and it'll draw my line string up there. So again, these edits that I've made by changing the string numbers, by adding a control code to join point, by adding a start code to start a new line, all those are staying within the bounds of using linking codes to draw my line strings for me. So let's go up and talk about how we can use point lists to do the same kind of edits. And to do that, we're going to go up here to our bridge deck, which is running over our stream. And you can see we have a problem here. We have again, probably a different string number from the east side of this bridge is connecting up to the west side abutment on that. So we have a bus there. And now I'm going to start talking about using a point list feature, because I don't want to really have to worry about the order in which these points exist in the field book, right? So it's easier for me now just to convert this to a point list feature, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hover over this line, and when I get my heads up tooltip, I'm going to go down here to this icon here, convert point list linear feature. And what that's going to do is that's going to take this feature, and instead of relying on the link codes that are assigned to it, it's only going to be dependent on the order in which the points exist in this point list. And so I can look at those points here by clicking on the manage point list, and it shows me the order in which they were collected there. And you'll notice they're all in order of they're in ascending order, because that's with the link codes, that's how they existed in the field book. So what do I want to do first with this feature? Well, first thing I want to do is I want to split, the end of this bridge deck over here from the end of this one over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is split this into two different features. So again, I'm going to hover over it. I'm going to get my heads up display, and I'm going to come and I'm going to use the break linear feature command. And just a note about these kind of editing tools here, these editing tools cannot be used on link code strings. If your string was still only dependent on link codes, I can't use these tools. But now that I've converted this to a point list, I get a lot of editing tools here, which I may like and want to use here. So now that I've converted this to a point list code, I'm going to choose break linear feature as my command. And since I already have it selected, all it's going to do is prompt me and say, okay, locate the point you want to break it at. So I'm going to come in, zoom in, and I'm going to click on the point there and say break it there. And you'll see what it does there. It gives me now two independent line strings there. This one is named BRGD1, Bridge Deck 1, and this one is Bridge Deck 1 space 14. So it split those into two different. Now I can edit I can use my tools. Either I can run this tool, remove point from linear feature, or I can just, in the manage point list, I can go and grab that first point, that 1574 doesn't belong here, and I can delete it there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to delete it here in the point list. I'm going to highlight 1574 and hit delete. And when I do that and hit accept, it's going to redraw that line string without 1574 being in it. And now let's go back over to where the remainder of that line string is. Now I want to connect it back up with where it should connect to. So this is the very end of my bridge deck feature, and I want to connect that up over here to a point, probably this point right here, 1530. So I'm going to write that down. 1530 is the point I want to connect it up to. Again, to do that, I can either use the manage point list, or I could come in here and say append point in linear feature, and I'll do that real quick. So I'm going to choose this option there, and it prompts me to locate the point feature that I want to add to it. So I'm going to go up here, and say that's the point. It shows me temporarily what it's about to do. It allows me to pick, where I want to join it up. So I'm going to keep it down here, joined to that end of the line, and I'm going to do a data point to accept. And so what it's done is it's added that point to the beginning of the point list for that feature there. Point list features allow me to not be so concerned with the order in which the shots were shot in the field book, but I can just reorder all these strings, how I want them. If I let's just show one more thing. If I highlight that point, I can move it up and down in its location in the string. So if I move it down, we can see the element changing there as that point is now in a different location in that line string. So now that I'm not relying on link codes, but I'm using on a point list, it's allowing me to do some different types of edits in which the order in the field book is not as important there. So a lot of flexibility there. Just wanted to show that those two options in doing our editing. Okay, so we fixed our driveway over to the west. It looks like we fixed up our stream, and our bridge deck's pretty good. I think our 2D graphics are pretty good now. I want to start looking at the terrain, at the 3D. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the terrain, and I'm going to change its feature definition real quick to get the triangle. So existing boundary is its current feature definition, sorry. And I'm going to change that to existing triangles. And let's just have a look at how this looks in 3D. Let's do a rotate view, move our locator point to somewhere around our bridge deck, and let's move it in 3D. Okay, so as I zoom into my bridge deck, I can see I kind of have a problem with my terrain model in that I really don't want my bridge deck features to be included in my terrain model. In this case, I just want an existing ground topo here. If I want a terrain out of those, I can come in later and create a terrain from graphics by choosing those. But right now, I don't want those included in my existing ground terrain. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over to my OpenRoads standards, and I'm going to choose in my feature definitions. I'm going to go to those bridge feature definitions, survey bridge, and I'm going to set the feature definitions. For example, bridge deck. I'm going to click on bridge deck, go to its properties, and I'm going to tell it do not include. So my bridge deck will not be included in the triangles. You see those triangles go away. I do not want my bridge railings to be included in the terrain model. So I'm going to click on that and say do not include. So every feature that uses this feature definition will not be triangulated to. My bridge piers, those intermediate piers, I do not want those included in the terrain model. I'm going to set those to do not include as well. And you can see that cleaned it up pretty good. Now, I still have some problems there. Let's zoom in and see. Looks like I have the center line of the bridge is being triangulated to. Let's look at that. As I hover over, I can see it's the concrete pavement crown that's being triangulated to. Now, I'm not going to change the feature definition for the concrete pavement crown because there might be concrete pavement on other parts of my job that I do want to triangulate to. So really, I just want to change this one feature. So I'm going to click on this one feature and go to properties for it. So instead of, let's see, instead of triangulating, instead of changing all the feature definitions, all of the lines that have that feature definition, I just want this one not to triangulate to. So you can see I had to expand. I couldn't remember which category that was in. It's in the linear feature category, and I'm going to change just for this one crown feature. I'm going to set it to do not include also, and as soon as I do that, it retriangulates. And so my bridge is looking a lot better. I have one more problem here. It looks like my piers are triangulated to, and that causes me to pause for a moment because I already turned the bridge piers off to not triangulate. So let's look at those two elements and see what's going on. If I hover over the element itself, I can see it was actually coded as a bridge abutment. So it looks like this is just a miscoded line. And again, I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to choose quick properties maybe on that and change the field code to a bridge peer, which is BRGP instead of BRGA. And as soon as I make that change, it's no longer triangulated. And we'll do that same for this bridge peer, change the field code to BRGP, and hit enter there, and it makes our triangulation look a lot better. Okay, so our triangulation looks good. I want to go ahead and create a terrain file out of this, a separate DGN that contains this terrain. And to do that, we're going to go to the File menu. We're just going to create a new DGN from a 3D seed again. We're going to hit the New button up here and create our 3D seed. Should already be selected down here. We're going to create a new DGN to house this terrain. I'm going to call it terrain and hit Save. And it's going to create that blank DGN file for me. When that file gets loaded up, I'm going to go back to the Home tab up here in my ribbon, and I'm going to hit the Attach Tools, and I'm going to attach my survey DGN to it. So the other file we were working in, I'm just going to attach that. I'm going to accept all the defaults and hit OK there. Then I'm going to fit the view. Now, really, to get this terrain from the survey DGN into my existing terrain DGN, all I'm going to do is use the copy command, just the straight up regular copy command that we would use on any other graphics. I'm going to hit copy. I'm going to choose my terrain element, and I'm going to choose at a snap point there. Let's get it selected. There we go. And so I'm just going to snap it back to the exact same location that it came from. And so what that did was that copied the file. You can see I didn't get it exactly snapped there, but for time's sake, we'll continue going here. What that did was that took a copy from the reference file, placed it in this active file, so that if I go back now and detach my attachment, we'll detach that survey drawing and say OK. I have a terrain now in this DGN, and this is completely unruled, separate from my survey that is still existing over in my survey file. So if I wanted to take, if I wanted to create a new DGN that contains just the terrain, it's not ruled back to that survey, it's wholly a terrain in and of itself, and then give that to maybe my design group to start doing some design off of, I can just reference it in, make a copy, and here's a file that has nothing in it but a terrain. Last thing I want to do before I leave this file, I want to go ahead and give this a good feature definition, make this a good civil element, and then so I'm going to hit the geometry tab here, still in the survey workflow, and we're going to under the standards here, we're going to hit the set feature definition field. So we're going to give this terrain a new feature definition, and the feature definition I'm going to give it is a terrain feature definition type, and I'm going to just give it existing contours. So I'm going to locate it, I'm going to reset to complete, and there it's given it existing contours. So this is a terrain, it has a feature definition, I can reference this in. Joey's going to use this next week when he starts doing his roadway design. All right, so let's go back with a couple of minutes I have left. Let's go back to our survey DGN file, and let's do some annotation real quick and do some cut a plan sheet. And this will go pretty quick because all of my feature definitions are already set up with annotation groups to tell every line string how I want it annotated. So just to get things cleaned up here a little bit, I'm going to give this terrain its existing boundary feature definition back so that it turns off the triangles. So let's do that. Existing boundary. Okay, now since my feature definitions are already set up, they already have symbologies associated to them, they have annotation groups associated to them, I'm going to go to drawing production, and I'm going to hit model annotation. And I'm going to hit that button there. It's going to come up and ask me, do I want to annotate all the drawing models? No, I just want to annotate this one. So I'm going to do a data point here. And now what it's doing is it's going through, looking at every feature definition, looking at the annotation groups that I have set up for those feature definitions, and it's going to draw the annotation based on how it's defined in the annotation group. And so there's a lot of graphics in this file. We're going to give it just a couple seconds more to finish that up. And this data set, which is the training data set that we deliver, it has almost every line string has some annotation on it. So that's what's taking a little bit of time there. And now it's done. We can see that for our control points, it put the point name, the feature code, northern easting elevation. It is labeling a lot of our line strings. This is a ditch bottom. This is concrete pavement. This is a fence. All the annotations are just already set up through the feature definitions and annotation groups. On my pipes here, we can see that it's given me the length of the pipe. It's putting a flow arrow there. It's annotating the inverts in and out. So once I have that annotated, how to set up annotations is a whole nother class that we may do later when we get to drawing production. But again, the power is in how we've set up feature definitions and our text favorites and all that kind of stuff. Once I have that annotated, I just see that we're running out of time a little bit. Last thing I want to do is just come in and create a plan sheet. So I'm still in this drawing production tab. I'm going to go to create a name boundary, which is how our sheets are created. And there's basically, when I bring up the place name boundary tool, I want to talk about this here in the survey class. There's basically two methods here that I don't have to have an alignment. If I'm surveyed a site, a commercial site, or I'm just doing an intersection, I don't really have maybe a roadway control alignment. There's two methods I can use to create a plan sheet. I can use this. I can draw my element out here and use an element as a name boundary, civil plan by element, or I can just place name boundary from the seed. So from what boundaries contained in the seed. So I'm going to use this one today from drawing boundary. I'm going to set my scale to 1 inch equals 50 feet. And when I do that, I can see out in graphics, it's showing me the drawing boundary that's contained in that seed file. So I'm just going to do a data point around my bridge location there. And as soon as I do that, my create drawing dialog comes up. I'm just going to accept all the defaults there. And we can see that it created our sheet for us. And our sheet is there. We can zoom in and see all of our annotations there. Those were drawn to 50 scale. So those are there as well. So that is almost start to finish. We brought in raw data. We corrected the 2D planimetrics. We fixed up the 3D terrain. We got our terrain out to a separate file so we can send to design. And then we did a little bit of plans production, just using the feature definitions that were already created on our elements. And finally created our plan sheet here that we can send out to the plans to plotting. All right, so that is kind of real fast through the basic survey workflow. There's a lot of power and a lot of features that we didn't even cover here today. We just wanted to, again, take you through a typical workflow start to finish. We'll build on this. Next week, Joey will take our terrain and start building geometry on it and start doing our design. And we'll go through this 8-week session and do the design start to finish. So